Hey everyone, today we're ranking the characters least to most scary according to you. I asked my Discord to rate them very scary to not scary, resulting in a final percentage scare score. Let's get into it. Kicking us off is Trickster, 5.65%. I'm just glad that every list isn't going to start with Skull Merchant at the bottom. This placement I think is down to his colourful look and smaller stature. Skull Merchant does follow him up though, and this one I expected. She has an odd way of moving and look for someone who's meant to be scary, with her main horror coming from the weapon she wields and her creepy skull drones, which definitely have a creepy factor to them. Legion, despite being some of the more regular and less stylized characters, are rated above a few others, and I guess it's because they look a bit more grounded and grittier, despite their more regular stature and appearing threat. Wesker was next up, and this one also didn't surprise me. I think Wesker is more of a fun character that people like to meme about and laugh at his funny lines and stuff like that, which very much takes away the horror. The scariest thing about him is that he does look intimidating, and he has the arrogance to him that is fairly off-putting, but not scary. Clown got lower than I expected. I personally find Clown's design pretty creepy and just disturbing to look at. It's one of the better done grounded designs, I think, with it looking like someone you could encounter, without him being reduced to Legion's level of human looking, making it all the more scary. Artist got higher than I expected. I think this is to do with the creepy sound she makes and the more disturbing side of her character, where you can see the tragedy that happened to her simply by looking at her, seeing the absent hands and tongue and the creepy squeaks that she now emits, making her seem less human. Pig, I believe, got a little higher than some of these other more human looking characters, due to her ambush and stealth in general, which I do think can give people jump scares now and then. The visual of a pig head is also pretty disturbing. Knight, a shockingly low score that surprised me a lot, as Knight's scare factor is very similar to characters like Oni, for example, being a big hulking guy with a big sword. I guess Knight doesn't scream, but yeah, I find him just as intimidating personally. Freddy I thought was shockingly high. This one has to be more of a lore perspective, because his gameplay is rarely scary, I think. The lullaby is a bit creepy, I guess, but for the most part, he's not the scariest. Bubba I think mostly gets his scary points from being a big guy with a chainsaw. Fair enough if you find that scary, I think that's very valid. The mask, of course, is also another aspect of him that is most definitely disturbing. I also think his whole camping stereotype did affect this placement too, not gonna lie. Plague was another that got higher than I thought she would. I do agree the plague covering the side of her face is disturbing, but I don't think more so than a lot of these other characters. Maybe it's more of a gross factor in this case because of the vomit, I'm not sure. Twins were also quite high, I think. I personally would rate them very low for how scary they are, as I really don't think they are. Victor's growls can be pretty creepy, and Charlotte can seem quite intimidating too. Trapper, 38.27%, has a fairly accurate placement, I think. He's largely scary for his physical look, with his bone mask, the large frame, and the twisted metal that runs through his body. Huntress is scary for her lullaby mostly, I think, and I do think that's what got her placement around this point. She is big and intimidating, but the lullaby adds a lot of atmosphere beyond that. Her lore is also pretty scary and makes you very much not want to run into her. Deathslinger is not the most intimidating, I don't think, with his stumbling walk, and him not looking all too visually scary, although he does look rough and battle-hardened almost. The main fear factor, I think, is his lore and the spear gun in particular, which is really brutal. Cenobite, as I mentioned before with Wesker, is largely brought down by the memes surrounding him. I very much think he would be higher if it weren't for the whole I came thing. He's a visually creepy dude who lets out a certain chilling presence. His in-game power and ability to teleport you out of the realm is also pretty scary. Wraith I think is boosted lots by his gameplay, with things like Silent Bell and the Bone Clapper. He's able to get jump scares and sneaky grabs, which makes him scary. He does look visually fairly creepy with the skinnier legs and the larger upper body, with his quite poised look. He looks like he's always watching. Demogorgon was rated fairly middle of the road, despite it being an otherworldly creature. I think it's likely down to the whole perception from the community seeing it as cute though, and like a pet dog. Billy came out higher than Demo, which surprised me a lot. Hey, I guess a guy running at you with super speed and wielding a chainsaw, that would be pretty terrifying. I'd like to think there was a gameplay element to this pick too, with Billy players often being few, but quite deadly. Hag, despite her smaller stature, is rated very highly, and she manages to get her horror from her visuals and the disturbing nature of her appearance. The fact that she was once a young adult, yet looks so distorted by her lack of flesh that she appears as a withered hag, is very disturbing and quite scary. Also, her jump scares, I think, absolutely gave weight to this rating. Nemesis gets scary points, mostly for his size and the way he's just very physically intimidating. If you saw Nemesis, it would be scary, even though parts of his design seem a little goofy. An 8-foot bioweapon scares me personally. Spirit, I think, is similar to the scare factor of Artist, which is more the tragedy evident by just looking at her. You see the brutal cuts, the twisted creepy face, and the way she twitches about. The way her face moves from a smile to a grimace in seconds has always really freaked me out. Blight is creepy for his distant humanity, I think. The way he's literally a shell of who he once was, with his humanity visible but not entirely evident. He was designed very well, I think, and I think he's only lower here because his power can look a little silly at times, and his lore isn't that scary really. Nurse got shockingly high. I didn't realize people found her this scary, but maybe it's partly down to the gameplay elements too, with her being the scariest to face as the strongest in the game. She has scary elements like the piercing scream she lets out, and her more supernatural presence in the trials too. Doctor was placed quite highly. I think he's fully deserving of it too, and debatably I think he's one of the scariest characters in the game. Definitely the scariest human original character, I think. He's creepy and quite grounded with his scare factor, and yeah, the guy's just disturbing. The laughs, the hallucinations, it all builds to a very scary experience. The lore is also the most disturbing lore, I think, out of any of the characters. I do not recommend you read it. Executioner, I think, is debatably the scariest design in the game, and one of the most well done. The way he drags the knife, the way he lumbers about with the hulking pyramid covering where his face should be, just really does it for me. This one is more down to atmosphere, I think. Ghostface, I think, has to be purely for his jump scares and stealth elements. It can definitely be scary when you hear that reveal sound, or look off into the distance to see him peering from a corner. Visually, he's not the scariest, but his gameplay as well as lore and background definitely is. Oni is rated as our 5th scariest. He's a big angry guy who screams a lot and runs around with his kanabo. I do agree it's scary. One of the scarier elements to him is the map-wide roar, I think, and also I think just how deadly he is in his lore makes him seem very threatening. Sadako takes the 4th spot, and this one surprised me a lot. I think the menu jump scares definitely come into play with this placement. Lots of people are still shocked by those, I think. Sadako was a great reintroduction of horror to the game when she was added, with the way she moves through TVs and how sneaky she can be at times. She may be small, but definitely scary. Singularity, our newest addition to the roster, is already taking the 3rd spot with his creepy look and this disturbing aura to him. There's something about the mesh of flesh and metal that really puts you off. The way he clanks about can feel quite uncanny at times. The design team did a great job with him. Shape was the highest rated licensed character by over 10%. This one I think is down to his combination of lore, gameplay, and the jump scares he can provide in game. I do agree he can be very scary, particularly with the variety of add-ons at his disposal. Dredge, 91.12%, is unsurprisingly rated as the scariest character, and yeah, I completely agree. Dredge was designed to be a horror, and it totally accomplishes that. It looks disturbing, it sounds horrible, and even in trials and in game, this carries over with the nightfall mechanic, and the bursting from the typically safe lockers. Alright, well, that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed. Thanks, and goodbye.